Hey friends, welcome back to part number 2 for getting started with our first Power BI report. Now before I continue, let me just save my report, because so far I did not save anything, and just in case Power BI would crash, which of course might happen, then we would lose everything we have done so far. And in order to activate the autosave and recovery option, we need to save it at least one time. So press Ctrl S or click on the little disk on the top left just to save it. And then you can simply give it any kind of name. For instance, PBI, getting started, press save. And now the report gets saved and also the name is changed up here. And from now on, Power BI will, the same way as Excel or PowerPoint and so on, just autosave after, let's say, a few minutes, all the time. So just in case something might crash, then at least you don't lose anything, okay? Everything. So now let's actually, customize the report a little bit further, because so far we explored how we can create visuals, but it doesn't look too good, at least right now. So let's make this a little bit better, more appealing. So let me just maybe do the following. If I go to view, I just want to mention this one more time. If you want to change here the formatting options, like for instance choose a different theme here, you can do that anytime. So if I'd say I'd like to go with the dog theme, the innovate one, tick this option, then I would have everything in here in this dark mode, right? If I prefer this, I can do that. If you prefer any other kind of style, then choose the specific one you prefer, right? So it's up to you. Just maybe one thing, I'd like to mention this. If you like the dark theme, I personally am a fan of that. I like the darker theme. I think it's easier for my eyes. However, if you know already in advance that you need to print the report very often, or people tend to print the report, I would discourage you from using a dark theme, because this would waste a lot of color, right, and ink. So I just want to mention that, because some people really like to still print things out, and if that's the case and you know that in advance, I would not choose this kind of theme, okay, just to mention that. So let me go back and maybe let's stick to the default right now. And let's improve our report. So let's say I'd like to see here my profit for my different kinds of regions. And I want to do that not in the table structure. Instead, I would use some of the visuals. Let's say here, I want to use it with a donut chart. And because I have my profit already here as a bar chart, I can select it and then just choose, I like to make this a donut chart. And then I also like to add something here. Let's say I'd like to see this for the region. So I can tick it. I can also drag it in here in the field section, but I can also be, more efficient, let's call it this way, and simply tick this option, and then Power BI is putting it on a legend for me by default. Let me just increase the size here, and I got my little profit region, profit by region here, donut chart. And if I want to go to the formatting options here for the visual, then I can choose it here. For instance, for the legend, I could specify where I do want to position it. Currently it's on the right center, but I can also move it to the top or at the bottom, where I think it's actually best suited. I can just change here the position if I want to do that. For me, the detailed labels, which are currently visible, are fine, but I want to actually choose or change here a little bit. Currently you can see I get here the 3K and then it's 47.32%. But maybe I'd like to adjust this here. Here I can say what exactly do you want to show. So if you want to say, for instance, all detail labels, then that also would give you here north, west, and so on. So the region itself. So it depends. You don't need to have it twice. So either you display it here or you choose a legend. I would only use one of them because otherwise you would have the same information twice, and that's not best practice. So that's something you can adjust here. And if you say category and data value, or let's say what we had before, data value and percentage, then choose this one. So I think that's fine. The position itself, you can try out different options here. So inside, maybe that's the better option for you. Otherwise, of course, prefer outside. That gives you that way. And this probably tries to visualize it the best way possible. Also, let me just make this smaller here. And let's actually go in here, sorry. And let's go to the values. That's where I wanted to go. And here, for instance, for the units, currently it's set to auto, But I personally think, because I get really small values in this data set here, and I don't like to see 3K, instead I would like to see the whole number. So for the display units, I say I'd like to see none. And if I tick on none, then you can see that now I see the whole value, like 900, 700, and so on. Otherwise, of course, if you have larger numbers, maybe you try out millions, thousands, billions, and so on. It's up to you what you need. Background, let's turn that on. Let's just see that. Okay, the background currently is white, so there's nothing to see. For the percentage, I think actually, I think 1% maybe is fine. If you need more, again, it's up to you how you want to display that. But this allows you really to customize here the decimal values for percentage numbers as well as for the absolute numbers. Whatever you want to display and the way you want to display it. Also maybe say in text size, let's say increase this a little bit just to have it bold enough, and let's maybe black, dark. So I think it's easier to see that way. So that's for the values in here. So let's say we are fine with that. As I said, if you want to adjust this further, please feel free to do this. Then I also would like to have maybe here some kind of KPI. I can see here my sales already as this one here, but maybe I'd like to add additional KPIs in here. So let's say under the formatting option, I can either now create multiple cards, or I can also use here the multi-row card. And if I take this option, now you can see my sales are visible in here, and I can add additional fields to my field list. I could say I also would like to see the profit, so I drag the profit in here, or just click on the profit, and it's also added. And now I can say here, oh sorry, not product, profit, here, drag this inside here, and then I can see here also my sales as well as my profit in here as KPIs. And if I also want to add the price, I can continue that, simply clicking on the price here, and then I would also see the price bigger in here. And the way it depends on how you want to change it. If you make it bigger, if you want to see it maybe in lines like that or next like that, it's up to you. Also, if you click on a little down arrow here, you see that you can also customize the aggregation type. So for instance, for the price, probably it makes more sense to have maybe the average price which people have been paid, right? Or have paid. So let's take this option, and now you can see you get the average price in here. For the profit and the sales, I would like to have the sum. That's fine. Also, if you go to the formatting option here again, you can then, if you select the visual here, go to the category labels here, and also kind of play around with the size. If you make them bold, you can see here the labels in bold. I think that's fine. And for the values here, you can also customize this here further. If you also want to make them bold like that, that is fine. And of course, customize this further if you want to do that. Underline that, for instance. It's up to you what you want to do, right? So what else can we explore here? Let's have a look at the cards itself. So for the card, you can customize it here further. Do you want to add a title? And if so, what should the title look like? About the style. Do you want to add style? The background here, for instance, just to show this to you. If I make it blue, then you have a blue background and so on. So this, again, of course, depends on, let me just go back in here. I don't want this, but depends on the way you want to style each visual. Just want to highlight one more time that there are so many options available, and please try them out and figure out what's actually the one you want to use. Also, if I click on an item here directly, like sales, for instance, I could also specify the formatting here. For instance, if I say this should be US dollars, I can tick this option here, and now you see I got this formatted as US dollar amount. If you want to change a different option here, you can see that if you click, there are various, in this case, currency available, which you can use here, right? You probably find what you're looking for. And also you can customize here the amount of decimal numbers you want to show. But for me now, let's say sales is fine. I click on profit here, and I will do exactly the same. I should also want to display this in dollar amounts. You can see that here is fine. So then let's actually maybe also insert a header. Let's go to insert here and say for the text box, and let's say my first Power BI report, right? So let's select everything. Let's make this bold, also center it, and maybe also increase the size here for now to 24, like that. Okay, and maybe customize this here further. If you have a specific font you want to use, I'll choose this one for now, just to show you what's available in here, okay? So let's use this and let's maybe drag this and place it here in somewhere. Let's select it and also go to, in this case, view, and say for, to format, and say for the alignment here, we want to align this center. Okay, now it's in the center. And now I select my KPI card here, and I will also drag this and maybe drop it here in the center, like that in the middle. So else, I got my table here. Of course, I can drag this table up here if I want to do that. But actually, I'd like to switch this. I don't need the table. Let me actually go with another, let's say, bar chart here. And I want to have a bar chart like that. So let me at first get rid of the sales. And let me also show the profit here. And then choose here instead a bar chart like that. Okay, so we got a bar chart for our regions. So because we see the region here already, let's actually switch this. Let's say we'd like to see this for the profit. So let me drag profit in here. Let me get rid of the region. So remove this here. And now we get a bar chart for the profit. Let me maybe drag this in here. The sales region around, place it maybe here. This could be actually a little bit smaller. So currently it's a little bit too big. So make it smaller here. We can place this on here. Place it somewhere. And of course this one here, because it needs more space. The map, can actually get rid of the map for now. And then let me just maybe place this here like that. Okay, make this maybe a little bit like that. And then place it. Okay, so that's that. And of course we can add additional, well, in this case, specific kind of visualization types. Let's say we had the map, so maybe we can still add the map here. Just make it a bit smaller here, just to fit it somewhere here on the screen, right? So it's up to us how we want to display that. Let me actually make this smaller here, like that, and place it maybe somewhere in here. So it makes sense to align them properly. This, of course, is up to you. You can see the lines, of course, are helpful here. But as I said, just to create our first report, you can play around with this, and I encourage you to do that, right? Just want to show you here what's possible. So also, one very important thing is the filter interaction, and that's what we cover right now. So let's say I want to create some kind of slicer. You're probably familiar with that from Excel. And if I go to the slicer option here, click on slicer. First, make sure you deselect everything. Click on the slicer option here, click on slicer. And then here I choose, let's say, for instance, my regions, which I have, right? So I can tick this option here for the region. And then I get my region here as a slicer. And if I click on one, let's click on North, for instance, you see that everything now filters to the region North. If I choose South, everything would be filtered to South. And if I want to select several of them, I could hold my Control key, for instance, and tick this option here. And now I've selected 2 of them, and the data gets filtered to those options. Also, if you click on this icon, you can clear the selections if you want to do that. By the way, you can also click on this little down arrow here and choose, do you want to keep it as a list, or do you want to have a drop down, which can also be used as a slicer if you want to do that. Also, be aware that the slicers also have, if I go to the formatting option here, options to formatting the visual. For instance, if I go to slicer settings here, I can see the orientation. And I personally actually go here and often choose horizontally. Because now you see that the slicer looks a little bit different, but from my point of view, it looks better. And I can place it somewhere here and then slice the same way. So click on North here and there are filters, click on East, filter East, or I hold my Control key and select several of them. That also works, right? So I personally prefer the horizontal slicer, but it's up to you. Maybe you need a drop down. Of course, it also depends how many slicers you want to add to your report. And other options which are available are the slicer header, which is currently region here. Do you want to show them or not? You can also untick them here, then they are not visible. Or you can also adjust the text title if you want to do that. Let me just untick it. I think it's clear for now. And also, of course, you can adjust here further the text for the title and so on. So for the values here, you can also adjust the font size. Here the font currently is that. I can use it dark here, then it would be easier to see them probably on a gray background. I can also make them bold and so on. I can play around with this and customize that. If I want to add a border, you can choose around the border position and so on. So color here and also the line width, right? Can also be adjusted in here for that. So it's up to you whether you want to display that or not. Just go to the formatting options and explore what is available in here for you. So for the background as well, you want to choose background. Currently it's white. You can see that here, but you can also customize that using a color if you want to do that. So that can be done for the report. And there are various other options. Maybe one visual, which I also quite often use, depending on what kind of data I have. But with sales and profit, I can show it to you. So let me just maybe get rid of the country. So let's get rid of this visualization type. And then choose here the funnel. So if you click on funnel here, then you can say, okay, I got this many amount of sales, and I got this profit here. And the nice thing about the funnel, as you can see here, you also get directly a ratio, like 16.5% of profit we have, considering the whole sales amount we had. So this funnel, of course, is always or very often used when it comes to marketing and acquiring customers. But you see that it could also be used with specific kind of, KPIs, measures you have, if you want to use that. And that's why I wanted to show it to you. So I personally like this visual because it also gives me additional information here directly without calculating myself anything. But as I said, it's up to you when you want to use it. And also maybe for the bar charts, just to show that, of course, you see here the data itself. But of course, if you go to the formatting options and you choose, hey, just a second, I actually want to see the data labels, turn them on, and then you also see here the numbers itself, which again can be customized here. If you say here, for instance, the position, you want to see them inside end, then they would be inside the bar chart. If you want to see them at the beginning, you can also customize that, or outside, as we've seen before. And for the values here, you can customize here again the display units. We've seen that here, for instance, I don't want to see the K. So if you go in here and say you want to see none, then you would see here the total numbers like that. Okay, which of course can also be increased in size here, and also the font and so on. And this is true for all the visuals you have, right? You need to customize them the way you think is best, which fits your needs. Okay, so this is that. And the final thing is the interactions one more time. Because so far, what we did was we created a slicer here, right? So you can click on that and then you filter the data. That works, but the great thing about Power BI is that it is interactive. And what does this mean? Well, that means that every visual you have is potentially a slicer or a filter. Meaning, if I, for instance, click on the region West here, this bar, if I tick this option, then you'll see that everything now gets also filtered. Currently, it is highlighted, which you see. So for instance, if I click on South, you see that now South is highlighted, right? And by highlighting I mean that the data, the bar itself is still visible, so the total, but here the darker blue is referring to the current selection. Or for instance, here the region South is this one, and the other ones are grayed out. That's the default behavior from Power BI, and that's the highlighting behavior. Also, this, of course, is true for instance, our KPI card, because you see that the data is now different because we selected South. And if I select East, just as an example, you see that the data here changes again. So this interaction is applied to all the visuals you have. Not to the slicer, because the slicer is just a filter, but for all other visualizations, they are now filtered by my selection here. However, I personally do not like this highlighting option. There are, of course, use cases where this makes sense, but most often I'd like to filter my data. What I mean by that is if I click on East, I only want to see, in this case, those 3 bars, and the PlayStation should not be visible, because obviously there are no sales, or in this case, there's no profit for the region East for PlayStation. And in order to change the interaction between charts, what you can do is you first select a chart. So select this one here, for instance, and then you can go to the formatting option here, format, and there you see the option edit interactions. Maybe you remember that when we covered our tour and went through that just quickly. And if you click this option here, you see that now all the visuals show, depending on the visual type, but icons. And here I can specify, because currently I have selected my sales region, this one here, and now I can specify how should the other visuals interact with my selection here. So as an example, if I select West, you see that currently this is highlighted here, right? For the region. Or if I click on East, that was our example, we see that PlayStation has no data. But it's still visible because it's highlighted. Now if I click on, instead of highlighting here option, which is this one here, I click on Filter. Click on Filter. Now you see that the data gets filtered. Meaning, if I click on East, I only see really what's available in the region East. And if I click on West, I would see the data for West, and so on, right? So that's what I mean by here, the option to edit the interactions and specify, do you want to show the highlighting, as we see here, or should I go to the filter option, go to filter here, and then the data gets filtered to my selection. So it allows me to specify how do I want to interact with visuals. And this actually is quite powerful, because I could also say that my filter here should not affect here this specific product table. So then all I would do is simply go here and select none. And if I take this option, then you'll see that if I select anything here, that other visuals get filtered, but this one always shows the total amount of data. So it does not get affected by any selection in here. But it can still be affected by other visuals. So that's why it's really completely customizable, which is quite powerful. Just remember that you need to go to Edit Interactions, then click on a specific visualization, and then you can customize here, because then the icons appear for all the other visualizations. And if you want to then do not show them anymore, simply click on Edit Interactions again, and you see that now they are gone. So that's how you can specify how any visual should interact with another visual. So these are the options to highlight or filter the data, either by using slicers, which you can create for all kinds of data you have, and also customize how they should look like, or you use the filtering option by the visual, which are there available by default. If you click on something, then the data gets filtered in here or highlighted in here, for instance. It's depending on what you want, or no interaction at all. Everything is possible. Okay, so that's it for part number 2 with Power BI getting started. Hopefully that was interesting, and I encourage you, try it out a little bit longer yourself, play around with the different formatting options which are there, and create your first report. Okay, so that's it. Thanks a lot for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next video. Until then, best guys.